One of the issues which has always annoyed me is, it's annoyed me, or have I just felt frustrated by it? Who knows? Either way, a key issue is the raising of the right, the incredible rhetoric that we're receiving from the right wing in the United States. And one of the questions I'm asking is, to what extent do you think at some point that rhetoric will permeate into Australian culture? And I'd be interested to know what you might think, because basically I think that it will become more and more endemic, and that we will find that the likes of Clive Palmer and Craig Kelly, fueled by Paul Murray, used to be Alan Jones, but not anymore, thank God for that, and Bolt and Kelly and all these other guys on Fox News will be all doing what the media is doing, the right-wing media is doing in the US. All sponsored, fervently sponsored, I hasten to add, by the one and only ex-Australian Rupert Murdoch. So hopefully that we will be aware enough. We've been able to, in our own way, deal with the COVID crisis relatively well. In fact, the Labor government will tell you that we're on all measures far better than any other country in the world. And I guess to some extent that is true. Now, that has happened because at this particular point, we haven't had the influx of toxic behaviour and toxic rhetoric as exposed by the news media that you see in the right wing. So hopefully that experience may be a little bit different here in Australia. Well, it has been to this point. But my warning is that it will at some point come to dominate us in a way which will break us apart, which will cause our version of democracy to become fractured, and as a result, maybe even collapse. I doubt that will happen, but you just never know. We have a percentage of Australians who are anti-vaxxers who choose to believe that their freedoms are being taken away from them. You have a toss-up between some freedoms diminishing and dying. I'm going for having my freedoms diminished to some extent. And I did hear today that 99% of all Australians over the age of 60 are vaccinated. So that's, I think that's slightly a bit more than an average, or a bit more than 50%. So I'd suggest that that's probably a good outcome, and probably is one of the best percentages worldwide. 99% is pretty good. So we're doing the right thing at the moment. But from the Northern Hemisphere lurks this terrible danger that we all have to confront, which is the likes of right-wing propaganda, and how that will influence us remains to be seen, because at the moment we don't have an influential network like Fox is in the US. We do have, however, Sky News here in Australia, which is basically the equivalent, with some very crazy people on that side of politics as well. So, but I just wanted to highlight an article that I came across today that I think is really worth noting in terms of what's happening in the US. And when I do this, just keep in mind that at some point this may happen to us here, and we need to be extremely mindful of the possibilities that might occur. We just noticed my internet is not buffering properly, so it's probably a reason at my end, I think. So if my voice is a little bit behind, I do apologise, but I'll just go through this anyway, and I'll review it later. So the article is this one, which says extremist rhetoric from right-wing media and officials is intensifying, experts say, and this is from The Guardian. And this is comparison. So the other day there was a comparison made between a comparison of Democrats to Nazis, and there was a conversation about Dr. Fauci being replicating Mengele was the Nazi in Germany that killed millions of Jews and was just a terrible man. But anyway, and the issue was that they were comparing Fauci with Mengele. And there's just, they're just diametrically opposed. One man's trying to save the world, the other man's trying to destroy it. And so we have this comparison between the people that are saying these terrible things and also people like Tucker Carlson and so forth, who are adding to and fueling this flame of discontent that clearly sits within the American people, but is also destroying the United States all at the same time. Now, the extremist rhetoric from right-wing news, so we'll just highlight that bit. So the extremist rhetoric from right-wing news networks and some elected Republicans is intensifying. Experts have warned after a Republican congressman compared Democrats to Nazis, and a hard-right news host suggested tens of thousands of Americans should be executed. So, and the interesting thing is it's not just a few people that are saying this, it's a whole range of different people. So it's not just politicians, it's people in the media, and then of course that feeds on to people in the public who are making these comments and accepting these notions as being their version of the truth for whatever reason, and then they expand, and as a result of that, people like Anthony Fauci have to have guards placed upon them. Members of Congress have also had to have security teams assigned to them because there are so many threats of killing them and their family and heaven knows what else. And even though we do have some of that here in Australia, particularly around Dan Andrews and what's happening in Victoria at the moment, we don't have it on the same sort of scale that they have to in the US. And this happens because the right wing is continually feeding this propaganda, false propaganda, about those people for whatever reason they dislike. So normal discussions and debate and the exchanging of ideas just is no longer on the cards, completely off the cards. That's something that just doesn't happen anymore, and it's more about confronting some of these issues and confronting them in a way which is just black and white. We hate this person should go. Not only that they should be executed, they should be hung, they should be a whole host of terrible things should happen to them as a result of having a different opinion to you. And this is full of danger. So it goes on to say that the right-wing TV personalities, including Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and Republican politicians, have seized every opportunity to rail against Democrats and Liberals in recent months, with their race increasingly coming to the fore. With race as a policy, or the race as the issue, more and more presented as being an issue. On his Fox News show on the 24th of June, Carlson seated in front of a screen, blaring the words "anti-white mania." So this is the race card. It is about the whites. Everybody is rallying against white people, and that we need to proclaim what it means to be white, which is a very Ku Klux Klan type issue, and that the US could become Rwanda of all places, where there was a 1994 genocide. So the comments came a couple of months after Anti-Defamation League called for Carlson to resign. And if the interesting thing for me is that the left, should the left be behaving in the same way that the right behaves? I don't believe that they should, but should they increase their rhetoric around this and push back even harder? I know the left-wing media tends to, but do they do it enough, and do they do it in a more meaningful way? No, they don't. And we should find a way to make a stand against bizarre, insane rhetoric, which basically talks about killing people, destroying people that have a completely different view to their own. Impassioned defence of the white supremacist great replacement theory is what Carlson was talking about on his show. The rhetoric is both intensifying and it's more widespread. It's not like it is the first time right-wing media have had moments to flare up. but typically it would have been limited to one show or personality. This is Angela Caruso, the president of the Media Matters, a progressive media watchdog. What happened, especially without Donald Trump having social platforms, is that it did create a pretty big vacuum. So everybody seemed to feel what Donald Trump was saying and doing. And she goes on to say, what you've seen is jockeying to get as much of the audience share, but also influence shares. Everyone is kind of scrambling right now to grab as much as they can. That's why they hit as many themes as they possibly can. You're not just going to get more racial inflammatory rhetoric, there's more conspiratorial stuff as well. Now that's so true that we're finding that these people are scrambling for recognition, to be placed out there in front of everybody, and everybody can loudly cheer all the wonderful things that they're saying because they align with their bizarre conspiratorial beliefs. Now, even though that hasn't happened in Australia to that large extent, we did see some part of that happening when Clive Palmer and Craig Kelly got up at a rally a week or so ago and started to talk about anti-vaccination and some of their crazy theories about freedoms being taken from them. And it goes on to say, away from Fox News, Pearson Sharp, a host of the hard right, one American news worker, has been tempted to carve out his own niche of extremism. So here are people who are just starting out basically, but are endeavouring to be able to become relevant around this issue. And that own niche of extremism. In late June, Sharp raised the unhinged and untrue theory that tens of thousands of people meddled in the election and preventing Trump winning, and went even further than Carlson on these comments. And there was something that I saw today as well, whereby they were saying that, so there's this idea, I've seen it before, but it came across some other media comment I was watching, whereby they were saying that we shed, so somehow people that are vaccinated shed the vaccine, which is infected with a whole host of other stuff, and then everybody else is going to become infected with whatever it is supposedly in this vaccine that's so horrific, and it's going to just wipe everybody out. I've also heard the other notion was that those people that are vaccinated, that it's only good for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years they die. So in that case, 99% of those 60-year-olds have had it really, but they're getting 3 years. Maybe some of them had. But so all these conspiracy theories that we don't understand. I had an opportunity last night to meet with a group of people who were talking about things in relation to child protection, and one of the things of note was that they were sovereign citizens, and they were talking about issues that I didn't understand, nor did I agree with. But I found that they were really nice people, that once you had an opportunity to talk to them about other issues that weren't about sovereign citizenship and some of the crazy beliefs that they had, they were reasonable people. They were certainly prepared to listen to some of the things that I had to say about an area which I am a relative expert, I guess, and that is child protection and so on. So and social work and that sort of thing. So I'm not saying that all these people are crazy. I'm saying the people that feed them these ideas. See, I don't even believe that they're crazy. I think, as this article is pointing out, it's an agenda they have to become relevant. So these people are small-minded individuals who basically are just not relevant in their own world, want to be relevant, want people to talk about them, want to be noticed, want to be understood. I think they're craving for attention. They're narcissistic, and some of them, regretfully, are psychopathic. And they don't care really what happens to the people that they're trying to influence, providing they are the ones that basically become relevant. So it goes on to say, the right-wing television hosts find themselves in competition to meet their audience's demands for Trump conspiracy theories, claiming those same hosts have frequently helped elevate, Caruso said, the inevitable consequence is that there's going to be more violence. And that's my fear. My fear is that there is going to be more violence as these people seek to become more and more relevant. And Brian Stelter, a man who I like actually from CNN, he says his newly released book, Hoax, explores how Fox News covered Trump, told in an interview in June that the US had entered an environment where the Fox base prefers propagandistic opinion shows rather than any semblance of news. And clearly these are the shows that people are watching. These are the things that people are interested in. And as a result of that, they're not interested in the news or feeding themselves with relevant information or what's actually happening in the world. They're more concerned with the conspiracies that are being sold. So people like Tucker Carlson and Hannity and others become more and more relevant because for these stations, more and more people are watching, more and more advertisers are on board. Less and less, I would hope, but there are more. So they're creating revenue for the company. So, Murdoch probably thinks that's pretty good for the bottom line. So who gives a shit what it is that they're saying and how that particularly is impacting people? No one cares. They can go unchecked. And the end result, if it means that they're going to have a wider and wider audience, then that's better for the network. So they don't care. Well, people want to be lied to, and it's above my head to know. And it's above my head to know what to do about that. Still, told the Washington Post. What do we do about that when millions of people want to be lied to every day? And I think that's a really interesting point. The hysteria is not limited to television. Last week, Vice leaked video of a speech by Scott Perry, a Republican congressman and devotee of the full stolen election theory, in which Perry told the Conservative Pennsylvania Leadership Conference that they should go fight them, referring to Democrats. So they're talking about physically fighting them, not fighting them through rhetoric, not through language or through ideas, but just go and beat the crap out of them. Vice reported that Perry claimed many Democrats did not share the same American values as conservatives. And there's an interesting set of videos, clips done by CBS, which look at the emergence of the right-wing Pentecostal churches in the US and the influence that they have. And it's so obvious that they are influenced by, even though they dare not talk about it in these terms, but they're racist. There's no doubt about it that in most of these churches that are extremely right-wing, it's hard to find an African American because their views are so racist. They won't say that they are, they'll say that they're not, they're all inclusive and whatever. But and the other interesting thing is when you watch some of these pastors talk, you realise that it's a show, it's a performance. It's no different from the performance from Carlson and Hannity and all these others. They are performing to an audience for hubris for themselves, not to be able to, not necessarily spreading anything that's constructive. It's all negative, and it's about building their own sense of ego and importance with their listeners. So it goes on to say we can acknowledge that maybe not every one of them is that way, but that doesn't matter, Perry said before drawing a dark parallel. We've seen this throughout history, right? Not every citizen in Germany in the 1930s and 40s was in the Nazi Party. They weren't. But what happened across Germany, that's what's important. What were the policies? What was the leadership? That's what we have to focus on. And I think that, I didn't show that, but that's it on the screen. So what was the leadership and what did we have to focus on? That's the issue. And that's my warning to people, is that there is looming a problem, a big problem. And we have to find a way to make a stand against it so that it doesn't take over our politics, doesn't influence and control those people who aren't prepared to look for facts. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.